Saruman is giving an impassioned pre-war speech. A great battle is about to take place. In an instant, the legion of orcs beneath his tower stirred up a cacophony of excitement. They were restless, eager to invade the world of Middle-earth. Simultaneously, Saruman forged an alliance with Sauron through a crystal ball, and the Twin Towers alliance was poised for action. Barad-dûr, situated near Mount Doom, held Sauron's malevolent eye atop its pinnacle. Barad-dûr and Saruman's Orthanc were collectively known as the Twin Towers. Formidable and ominous, the colossal gates of Mordor, weighing thousands of tons, slowly creaked open, while the Mordor army embarked toward the kingdom of Rohan. Meanwhile, another orc legion sped through Rohan's borders on a mission to deliver 2 recently captured hobbits to the white-robed wizard, Saruman. Meanwhile, the Prince of Elves and the others are picking up the pace to keep up with the orcs. Their goal was to rescue the hobbits before the orcs reached Isengard. The orcs, catching a whiff of their presence, quickened their pace. Legolas isn't catching up with orcs. After 3 days and nights of running, they couldn't hold on any longer and decided to rest for the night by the forest of Fangorn. The orcs had not consumed food or water during this time, and hunger had sparked dissent among them. Some orcs got hungry and suggested swallowing the 2 hobbits, which resulted in a sudden outbreak of infighting. Pippin and Merry took advantage of the chaos to devise an escape plan.
Looks like meat's back on the menu, boys!
Just as the orcs were about to descend upon them, a spear impaled one of the orcs from behind. The sound of horses' hooves came from the distance, and a regiment of cavalry marched right into the orcs' ranks. They were so brave and well-equipped that they wiped out the orcs in no time at all. Legolas, observing the celestial movements, suspected that last night had seen bloodshed, and sure enough, the cavalry came at them last night. Aragorn, no longer in hiding, stepped forward and called for a halt.
Rohan! What news from the mob?
He wished to inquire about the 2 hobbits. Suddenly, the cavalry encircled them. The captain of the cavalry questioned their purpose for trespassing Rohan's borders. Gimli, a dwarf, responded with defiance.
I would cut off your head, dwarf, if it stood but a little higher from the ground.
You would die before your stroke fell.
But Aragorn intervened to defuse the tension. The cavalry captain introduced them as the cavalry of the kingdom of Rohan. King Rohan had been under Saruman's control for a long time and had become a corrupt ruler, and because they had been compelled by the mutinous military around them, they were banished and sent to the borders of the kingdom of Rohan. Then they told Aragorn that they had destroyed a legion of orcs last night and left none alive. They piled up the bodies of all the orcs and set them on fire. Before they left, they gave them 2 fast horses and rushed off. The trio swiftly reached the battlefield from the previous night to search for clues about the hobbits. They found a hobbit's belt, and sorrow gripped their hearts. While Aragorn was blaming himself for not protecting Hobbit, he found traces of them on the ground. The clues revealed that they were not dead but had broken into the dreaded forest of Fangorn. Pippin and Merry were unaware of the dangers of the forest. The trees here have survived in the forest of Fangorn for thousands of years, moving and communicating in their own language when in danger. Soon Pippin and Merry were captured by the tree spirits. As the forest of Fangorn is constantly being cut down by the orcs, the tree spirits are not sure if they are related to the orcs, so it planned to hand the 2 hobbits over to the White Wizard for judgment. When they heard about the White Robe Sorcerer, they knew it was Saruman. Meanwhile, the 3 of them enter the forest of Fangorn to look for the hobbits. Legolas keenly heard the trees conversing with each other, and danger was slowly approaching them. They took up their weapons and stood at the ready.
Must be quick.
The white-robed sorcerer blocked all the attacks of the 3 without any effort. A white light shone directly into their faces, and they couldn't see if the person in front of them was friend or foe.
Who are you?
Show yourself!
The blinding white light slowly dispersed, and the crowd finally saw that it was Gandalf. Gandalf's appearance left them so excited that they couldn't even speak. He had not only survived but had advanced to become a white wizard. According to Gandalf's account, after he and the Balrog fell into the abyss together, they engaged in a life-and-death battle in the void. They fought relentlessly for 3 days and 3 nights, eventually ascending to the endless steps that led to the highest peak of the Misty Mountains. It was on the mountaintop that Gandalf defeated the Balrog, but he was extremely weakened and seemed on the brink of death. However, instead of fading away, Gandalf's soul was directly transported to the presence of Iluvatar, beyond the universe. Iluvatar bestowed greater power upon Gandalf and sent him back to Middle-earth to continue his unfinished mission. Gandalf stepped into the role of the fallen Saruman and was promoted to become a white wizard. He had arranged for the Treebeard to send the 2 hobbits back to the Shire. Gandalf learned that Saruman was going to start with the Kingdom of Rohan. The 4 of them decided to go to the Kingdom of Rohan together to remind them to prepare their defenses. After a grueling journey of 3 days and 3 nights, they finally reached the Kingdom of Rohan. King Theoden was under Saruman's control and had fallen into a state of confusion and delirium. As Gandalf entered the Great Hall, he sensed a dark presence and concealed his identity by wearing his grey cloak. Grima sensed that Gandalf meant trouble and quickly ordered the guards to apprehend them, but Legolas and Aragorn swiftly overpowered them. Gandalf, with determined steps and his staff in hand, approached the king. Gandalf softly chanted an incantation, attempting to break the spell that bound King Theoden. Suddenly, Theoden mocked and taunted Gandalf, claiming that the Grey Wizard posed no threat to him. In response, Gandalf removed his grey cloak, and a radiant light illuminated the entire hall. Using his staff, Gandalf forcibly expelled Saruman's influence from the possessed King Theoden. Theoden's pale face gradually regained its color, and his consciousness returned. Grima was banished from the Kingdom of Rohan. With a major battle looming, King Theoden immediately ordered the mobilization of his forces to defend his people and instructed everyone to relocate to the Helm's Deep Pass. This fortress, with its towering stone walls reaching 100 meters high, had guarded the safety of Rohan for generations and was known as the Impregnable City. Gandalf told Aragorn to escort the Rohan people to Helm's Deep. He went to gather the scattered Rohan knights for support. Gandalf and Aragorn agreed to meet at Helm's Deep when the first light of the 5th day appeared. The next day the king and Aragorn set out on the road with the old, the weak and the children, but word soon reached Saruman, who sent his warg cavalry to ambush the Rohan expedition. King Theoden ordered the elderly, women, and children to move ahead while he and his warriors remained to confront the enemy. Legolas was the first to unleash a barrage of arrows against the wargs. The warg cavalry swarmed in large numbers. By now, his teammates were arriving, and Legolas jumped lightly onto Gimli's horse and charged with them. Aragorn fought fiercely, dispatching several warg, but suddenly, one of the warg lunged at him from behind, and another attacked from the front. Aragorn managed to slay the orcs on his back but was trapped by the warg's reins. Warg runs too fast to break and Aragorn and warg fall off the cliff together. After the battle, Legolas stood at the edge of the cliff searching for Aragorn, but his body had been washed away by the rushing waters, and his fate remained uncertain. There was no time for grief, as now was not the moment to mourn Aragorn. They hastened their pace to reach Helm's Deep. After much effort, they finally reached the fortress. A battle between man and beast is about to start in Helm's Deep. Mercenary takes Mammoth through the borders of the Kingdom of Rohan. These massive mammoths were formidable in battle, and the 3 hobbits had never witnessed such a spectacular display of military might. Just as they marveled at the sight, the mercenaries fell victim to an ambush by an unidentified group, resulting in the swift demise of all the mercenaries. Realizing the danger, the hobbits attempted to escape, but they were captured by the ambushers and taken to their camp. It turned out that these ambushers were aware of Sauron's plans for a major war and, as humans, they felt a responsibility to protect Middle-earth. Frodo told him everything. When he mentioned Boromir's death, one of the men grew visibly anxious. Turns out he's Boromir's brother and the second son of the regent, Chancellor of Gondor, named Faramir. The regent, however, was particularly fond of his eldest son. Boromir was a strong leader in Gondor, and the regent had long since made Boromir his heir. Faramir's fate was far different from his brother's. No matter how hard he tried, he was never recognized by his father, so he always wanted to prove himself. At that time, Elrond called a meeting of all the races. Faramir wanted to go along, but the regent never gave him the chance. The regent thought he could only be comfortable with Faramir's brother going on this mission. Faramir would have to defend the fortress for the rest of his life. Faramir, Upon seeing the one ring around Frodo's neck, desired to seize the ring and present it to his father to earn his approval. As Faramir was about to make his move, Samwise stepped forward and persuaded him. Your brother almost fell to the temptation of the One Ring, but in the end, he sacrificed himself to protect our expedition. He upheld his oath and honor with his life. How can you live up to your brother's behavior now? Faramir was filled with guilt upon hearing these words and decided to honor his brother's wishes by letting them go. Suddenly, Frodo sensed the call of the ring wraiths, and everyone began to prepare for the danger, seeking cover.
Take cover!
Frodo suddenly became physically uncontrollable and slowly walked out. He was so seduced by Ringwraith that he couldn't help but want to wear the One Ring. Samwise, disregarding the danger, rushed forward to stop Frodo's actions. In a corner, Faramir used his bow and arrows to drive the Ringwraith away from the city walls. With tears in his eyes, Samwise reflected that they should not be bearing such great risks. After regaining their composure, they set out on their expedition once more. On another front, Aragorn had fallen off a cliff and drifted in the river for 3 days and nights. Perhaps the prayers of the elf princess helped Aragorn to survive the dangerous period. His loyal horse eventually found him and carried him to Helm's Deep, where he reunited with the rest of the group. While on his journey, Aragorn spotted the orc army already marching toward Helm's Deep. He quickened his pace and hurried back to the Helm's Deep fortress. Gimli the dwarf was so excited to hear of his good brother's safe return that he couldn't help but hug Aragorn. The news of Aragorn's return was a huge boost to morale. Aragorn promptly informed King Theoden of the information he had gathered during his journey. He told the king that the orc army would arrive at Helm's Deep that very night, urging him to make immediate preparations for the impending battle. King Theoden expressed his fearlessness towards the orc army, as they had impregnable fortress walls that would never fall. This stronghold was as steadfast as a rock, easy to defend and difficult to conquer. King Theoden expressed that if the estate was lost, it could be replanted, and if houses collapsed, they could be rebuilt. As long as the walls did not fall, he would stand against Saruman until the end. Aragorn argued that the orcs had a much larger purpose in mind, which was to bring destruction to all of Middle-earth. He proposed that King Theoden should seek aid from other races to bolster their defense. However, Theoden had lost faith in alliances with the elves and dwarves, believing that their past alliances had crumbled. Aragorn said that Gondor would honor the oath of alliance, but after many orc attacks and no support, King Theoden no longer believes in alliances. Tonight, the fight was inevitable. King Theoden decided to hide the old, the weak and the children in the cellars. The rest of the people armed themselves. Despite having limited time to prepare and inadequate weaponry, old men and children were about to join in the brutal battle. Soon, the orc army arrived at Helm's Deep, and King Theoden donned his battle attire. It was clear that 300 men against 10,000 orcs had no chance of victory. Suddenly the door whistle blew. The elves have not forgotten their oath of alliance. They arrived with a formidable army of 5,000 warriors clad in golden armor, fulfilling their commitment. Aragorn was thrilled to see his good brother come to his aid and went up to him and embraced him. They were now prepared for the imminent arrival of the orc army. This is one of the most iconic night battles in cinematic history. The Battle of Helm's Deep raged on for a grueling 3 days and nights. Every shocking shot makes your blood boil. Human and elven forces have gathered atop the city walls, ready to strike. The orc horde is only 500 meters away from the battlefield. As the enemy draws near, the tension thickens. Everyone holds their breath, standing firm and resolute, fear forgotten in this moment, for behind them lie countless loved ones in need of protection. Suddenly, thunder rumbles through the sky, and a torrential rain begins to fall, adding gravity to the impending battle. Even those hiding in the cellar feel the oppressive weight of the impending conflict. Tens of thousands of well-equipped orcs have arrived on the battlefield. The human supreme commander, Aragorn, delivers a rousing pre-battle speech to his warriors. With a thunderous roar from the Orcish general, the battle commences. At Aragorn's command, both elves and humans rain down arrows upon the enemy. The orcs surge toward the city walls like an unstoppable tide. Aragorn orders a second volley of arrows to thin the enemy's front lines. Well-equipped orcs retaliate with crossbows. Before the men on the walls can react, Orcs rapidly raise ladders to scale the walls. Aragorn commands his forces to switch to close combat mode. Orcs begin to breach the defenses, making their way onto the walls. The battle came so unexpectedly that Rohan didn't even have a decent defense. They have no choice but to engage in brutal hand-to-hand combat. In moments, the wall is filled with the sound of death, and bodies pile up on both sides. Dwarf Gimli engages in a gruesome contest of beheading orcs with Legolas.
I'm on 17!
Meanwhile, orcs below continue to climb the walls. Orcs employ a second front, launching an attack on another section of the wall. They set up a shield formation to take the gate through the catwalk. Aragorn immediately orders a shift in focus to defend this breach. Under the cover of the shield formation, orcs manage to get the siege hammers to the gate of the wall. If the gate falls, all defenses will crumble. The only advantage they have is the stone wall, which is said to never fall. However, Saruman has already identified the wall's fatal flaw. They discreetly placed a team to plant explosives near the drainage system. Uruk-hai ignites the explosives, rushing toward the sewer. Aragorn notices this suspicious act and quickly has Legolas shoot him down with arrows. Even with several arrows piercing his body, the Uruk-hai's determination does not waver. He leaps and ignites the explosives, causing a violent explosion that rocks the earth. The sturdy wall is blasted open, creating a massive breach. Countless orcs pour through the breach. Led by Aragorn, elven archers swiftly transition to close combat. They bravely rush to hold the breach. Legolas uses a shield as a makeshift sled to quickly reach Aragorn's side. With a flurry of arrows, Legolas single-handedly takes down dozens of orcs. The battle exacts a heavy toll on both sides, lasting for an extended period. Despite their exhaustion, both sides persevere. The battering ram relentlessly strikes the gate, and it eventually gives way. To alleviate the pressure on the defenders at the gate, Aragorn and Gimli sneak in for a surprise attack. Aragorn tosses Gimli onto the bridge and follows closely behind. The two of them took out a large wave of orcs with their superior fighting skills. On the other side, orcs use ropes to pull up a ladder, allowing them to ascend the wall. Legolas swiftly takes aim, precisely hitting the rope. The unbalanced ladder crashes down into the orcs below. More and more enemies breach the wall, and the defenders are unable to stop them. They are forced to retreat into the inner keep and close the gate behind them. Inside, elderly and vulnerable Rohan citizens huddle together, prepared for the worst. King Theoden does not want the kingdom of Lohan to fall. He decides to lead a final, glorious charge for the kingdom, willing to sacrifice everything for its honor. They regrouped, put on their armor and prepared to meet the enemy. Gimli sounds the horn for the charge. King Theoden charges ahead, with his soldiers following closely behind. In moments, all orcs standing on the path are knocked to the ground. Rohan's generals will only fall in the way of the charge, defending their last glory with life and blood, defending their families behind them, while everyone was still fighting to kill the enemy. The white-robed wizard Gandalf charged forth with the first rays of dawn. In the radiant light, Gandalf appeared like a savior descending from the heavens. Everyone in the battle seemed to see hope in him. Gandalf, accompanied by scattered horsemen, arrived just in time to provide support. With a commanding shout, 5,000 troops surged forward, fighting for the people of Rohan and their king. As they advanced, bathed in the morning sun, they struck at the enemy. The orcs immediately turned to meet the enemy. In the sunlight, the orcs appeared extremely vulnerable. Gandalf, leading the charge with a staff in one hand and a sword in the other, forgot his identity as a wizard and dove into the midst of the enemy without hesitation. On the other hand, Pippin and Merry were sent back to Char by the tree spirits. The tree spirit then sees that the once lush forest has been cut down by Saruman. Those were its family and old friends for years. The tree ant let out a furious cry, summoning all their kin. The forest rustled as messages were exchanged, and they assembled for battle. They intended to make Saruman pay in blood for what he had done and to lay siege to his stronghold in Isengard. The tree ants first attacked the Isengard orcs with massive stones from a distance. After depleting one wave, they swiftly scaled the city walls and entered Isengard to engage in combat. Facing the towering and formidable tree ants, the orcs seemed like ants. Crushing punches and kicks gave orcs no chance to fight back, but soon orcs countered with a rope, and the fallen tree man was felled by orcs with an axe. The remaining tree ants swiftly hurled massive stones to aid their companions. Saruman can only watch from his tower as the tree men destroy Isengard. the orcs quickly found the treehuggers' Achilles' heel and burned them one by one with their fire attacks. As the orcs continued to use their fire attacks to their advantage, the tree goblins on the other side of the river destroyed the dam. The rushing floodwaters broke through, directly flooding Isengard. The tree men used their rooted form to stabilize themselves, and the ones that were set on fire used this opportunity to put out the fire. Unable to escape in time, all the orcs were swept away by the floodwaters, and they were carried into the armory. The forges, where weapons were still being manufactured, were also drowned. Back at Helm's Deep, they fought from dawn until daybreak. The Rohan forces were invigorated and fought even more fiercely. After their valiant efforts, victory was within sight. The orc horde realized that their cause was lost and chose to retreat. In a flash, they scattered like birds and beasts, discarding their armor and fleeing toward an ancient forest. Gandalf ordered everyone to halt and not pursue. The routed orc army sought refuge in the perilous forest of Fangorn. Little did the orcs know of the long-suppressed wrath of the tree people that awaited them. After a chorus of wails, the orcs were all devoured by the tree Ents. In the end, humanity triumphed over the darkness, defending Middle-earth, but at a heavy cost. After the great battle, dwarves Gimli and Legolas proudly announced their respective achievements. Gimli claimed that he was seated atop the 43rd orc's head. Legolas promptly shot an arrow at an orc who hadn't quite perished yet.
43.
He was already dead.
He was twitching.
He was twitching, cause he's got my axe embedded in his nervous system!
Saruman, atop the tower, understood that the situation was against him. Without delay, he swiftly packed his belongings, preparing to flee Isengard. In an instant, the orcs on the ground were submerged by the floodwaters. Both sides of the two towers had achieved perfect victories. The Battle of Helm's Deep had come to an end. Gandalf knew that the Dark Lord Sauron would not give up easily. He declared that the war to defend Middle-earth had only just begun. Ahead lay the pouring forth of Sauron's dark forces, directly targeting the greatest and oldest human city in Middle-earth, Gondor. The impending Gondor battle that would shake all of Middle-earth to its core.